Good evening, everybody. Welcome to this IBPS PO Mains 2017 Refresher Series for the English language section, and this would be the second session for the English language. So good to see some familiar faces from morning back here again at 6. That's great. Great to see you guys. So all set for learning. Happy learning. Yeah, so that's the objective, right? That you learn quite a bit and try and look at how you can save time in your exam. That's the objective of these sessions. So if you haven't seen the previous sessions, it's available on YouTube. We've covered one on reasoning and another one on data analysis and interpretation. Rohit's taken care of that, so you might want to catch that if you've missed it. And if you've missed the previous session, then yes, you can do that as well, right? In terms of your preparation itself, how many days do we have left? Close to exactly 10 days, maybe. Yeah, right? 10 or less. So either ways, I'm sure you guys are excited as the exam nears. And you are gaining confidence in being able to take the exam. So again, we're going to look at a range of questions, right? It's good to be prepared for all sorts of questions that we can possibly expect, especially in IBPS PO mains. So let's start. Nine days, okay. RBI assistant, 10 days, okay. All right. Okay, so let's look at our first direction. This again is a double blank, right? We know the drill. Let's read. All the readings began to come up properly once they started to dash their apparatus according to the changing environment. And then I decided to dash myself in sync with my changing financial condition till I could dash out a way to uplift the same. So one of the things that you can quickly do here, especially when it comes to fill in the blanks, is apply a little bit of collocations or word class, either one, right? See, for example, if you look at the first blank, started to do something, you need an action word here, right? Right? At least that meaning you need. And the last one, according to the changing environment, you need a noun form here. If you have to quickly apply word class, if you're familiar with word class, right? So let's look at it. All the readings began to come up properly once they started to, I know it can't be brought because it's not in the right verb form, right? I need the verb 1. Bring, brought, brought. Brought is verb 2, so I can quickly eliminate this. Second one, all the readings begin to come up properly once they, remember, whatever you choose, whichever option you choose, it has to fit both the context, right? Both the sentences that are given here. So all the readings begin to come up properly once they started to accommodate their apparatus according to the changing environment. Find is not a right word in the second blank here, right? For the first sentence, doesn't make sense. I decided to accommodate myself in sync with my changing financial condition till I could find out a way to uplift the same. Okay, maybe find goes in the second sentence, second blank, but not definitely in the first one. So I will eliminate this. Yeah, changing environment find is completely unrelated and illogical. What about 3? All the readings began to come up properly once they started to calibrate their apparatus according to the changing environment factor. Seems pretty correct, right? Because calibrate, I hope you know the meaning. It means to adjust or make some changes, right? So can I fit this in the second context as well? Let's see. I decided to calibrate myself, which means adjust myself, make some changes so that I'm in sync with my changing financial condition till I could factor out a way. Yeah, so I'm sure you're familiar with factor in. Factor out is also another phrase, right? To factor in something means to figure it out. Okay, let me factor this in. Let me figure this out. That's one factor in phrasal verb. What about factor out? When you say factor out, you're saying let me re-look at a particular situation or problem, right, in order to remove something from consideration. That's what it means. See, if we factor out something that we feel will change the situation or will improve the situation, then we have to do that. Then the resultant or the result can be more clear or more predictable. Just giving you an example. So go back to the context. So in the context saying I decided to calibrate myself in sync with my changing financial condition till I could factor out a weight. Factor out means to, let me put it down, to reanalyze a situation. Okay, it can be a situation, it can be a problem, anything. Why? So that in order to remove something, basically you're making changes, in order to remove something from consideration. So perfectly fits in both the context. In fact, option 3. Some of you came back and said option 5. You can't say improve out a way to uplift the same, right? Improve can't go with out. You either improve something, you don't improve out. Yeah? Likewise, you don't acquire out a way. Incorrect. And like we said, acquire and improve are verb forms. We need at least we need a noun form for the first context. Are you clear? So obviously it has to be option 3. Fair enough? Let's move on. His dash behavior gave an dash of rudeness in the first go, but it became more normal once I spent some time with him. The wheel was placed on an dash axle to give it an dash of. So if I look at my second blank for both the context, I have the indefinite article an, but obviously if you look at all my options in the second one, everything starts with a vowel, right? A quick skim will tell you that. So it makes it even more difficult for us to figure this out. But let's see. And in fact, all the words, even in the first blank, starts with a vowel. So my only, I feel the only challenge that you guys will feel is, the only challenge that you guys will face is the new words themselves, right? A lot of new words. I'm sure most of you will not even know the meaning of a lot of words that are here, right? Quickly, let's look at the words. What's equestrian? Have you seen these statues where, you know, somebody's sitting in, like, there's a statue with a guy sitting on a horse and he's, like, you know, lifting the horse. He's high up in the air. That's an equestrian statue. I can quickly relate to that image, right? So is that what we need in the context, the meaning? No. Affiliation. Affiliation means some sort of an association, right? His equestrian behavior gave an affiliation of rudeness? Incorrect. Doesn't make sense. The wheel was placed on an equestrian axle to give it an affiliation of, no, out. Unnatural, not natural. Appropriation means you set apart a specific amount of money to do something specific. Yeah? Are you feeling? Are you following what I'm saying? Appropriation. Again, not an appropriate word here, because I can't fit unnatural in the second context in the first blank. On an unnatural axle doesn't make sense. Actuation. What's actuation? Actuation is the act of propelling. You're taking some action. Opulence. Opulence is again an unrelated word because it means affluence, wealth. Adjunction. What's adjunction? Yeah? So, Ruby, we just discarded option 2 in fact, right? Saying that it will not be the right one. Adjunction, adjunct, to join, again, not the right word. His adjunction behavior, no. Right? Also remember, behavior is a noun, which means I need an adjective form here, which means I can quickly eliminate anything that has a noun form, right? ION, I can do it that way also. Quickly eliminate incorrect answer options. Insolence means arrogant, rude, yeah? Eccentric, on the other hand, means, yes, somebody who's eccentric means extremely crazy. Yeah, eccentric behavior, makes sense. Gave an appearance of rudeness. The wheel was placed on an eccentric axle to give it an appearance of another independent revolving link. Yeah? So I would request you to be a little patient because not everybody is familiar with the meanings of the options given, right? So we're learning here. Of course, if you apply word class, you can eliminate wrong answer options and then choose the correct one. Strange behavior, yes, that would be correct. Shravani. Yeah, let's move on. So that was one particular pattern. Let's look at the next one. So here we will have to, let's read the direction again. In each question given below, a sentence is given and is divided into 3 parts, 1, 2 and 3. For each part, a correction statement is also given. No, Monty. Because we are here, the technique that you will apply for the previous pattern is either you can apply collocations or you can apply word class, eliminate wrong answer options. For this blank, I need a noun form or I need a verb form. That helped us eliminate wrong answer options. There's no way you will choose wrong answers, right? Eccentric behavior, giving an appearance of something, these are collocations. We've heard people use these phrases. So yes, however, the meanings that I'm giving for all the other words is just extra for you to know in case you're not aware of the meaning. Yeah? Let's go back. So let's look at this. So basically we have, we've done this. If you were part of the previous session, you know the model, right? For each part, a correction statement is also given. You must determine which part requires correction and mark it as your answer. Let's look at this. The maritime relationship between the 3 countries. So Abhijit says part 2 and part 3 require correction. That's what he's saying. But let's look at it. Took a hit because of the blame game politics followed by the 3 governments after an oil rig exploded. The first thing that I can quickly identify as an error is article error, right? I have oil starts with a vowel, which means I need an and not a, right? Because I need an because it's a vowel. Okay, so part 3 has an error without a doubt. What about part 2? Somebody said part 2 took a hit because of the blame game politics. Blame game, have you heard of this? It's a collocation, right? Blame game. What's a blame game? Basically, you don't accept responsibility for something that went wrong, right? You blame somebody else for that. That's a blame game. So, blame game, now the word choice following blame game, right? You can indulge in politics, but they're saying blame game, something was followed, right? Usually, the word that gets associated with game is game strategy or strategic game, right? It's a strategy and not politics. In the context, you can't say the blame game politics followed. The strategy that was followed by the 3 governments. Let's go back to the context. They're saying these guys followed some particular strategy. What was that? They followed the strategy of blaming others, the blame game strategy, right? So that's an incorrect word choice as well here. Yeah, that's right, James. So blame game strategy was followed by the 3 governments. Yeah. So understand the context, the relationship between these, again, the three countries took a hit because they were blaming each other. After an oil rig exploded, they're saying, hey, I think you're the reason why this happened, or you're the reason why this happened. So, remember, politics, we're talking about trying to gain control or power. So that's not what's happening here, right? The context is very clear. So blame game strategy was followed by three governments. So 2 also has a problem. What about 1? John, do you think part 1 has an error? Because nobody came back and said, I don't know, let me go back and see if part 1, has anybody mentioned part 1? I don't see anybody having mentioned part 1, which means, let's look at this. The marital relationship, look at that. It says 3 countries. You usually say among, right, and not between, because we're talking about more than 2 countries. So part 1 also has an error. Between has to be changed to among. Yes? So which means what? Yes, that's correct, Rahul. It seems like part 3, because all the 3 parts have an error. Yeah? And that's corrected here, right? We have among, we have strategy, and we have an. So it has to be part 3. All 3 has an error. So you're following this model, right? It's pretty simple. If you are not part of the previous session, basically you identify if there is an error in any of the parts. You look at the correction statement, and if you see, sometimes the correction statement will also be incorrect, right? So don't assume that the correction statement will, that's the tricky part. They will confuse you. It might not, the original statement might be absolutely fine, and you don't have to choose the correction statement. So that's the tricky part. Let's go back. Let's look at another one. Looking close at the current economical deficit, one can understand the relationship amongst the tax collection and the expenditure dynamic, as well as the errors of the previous ministers. Great, Varshini. If you've done that, then you've got this. What else is happening? So let's quickly do this. I want you to apply the strategy that we just did for the previous question. It's the same model. So can you come back and tell me if you find an error in, this is part 1, this is part 2, and this is part 3, right? So do you see an error? Are you able to spot any error in any of these parts? You can also keep glancing at the correction statements also, right? You can do that simultaneously to save time. Looking closely at the current, okay, so I have 4, 2, okay, you guys are giving me the options. So basically I have 4, 2, and then 5. Let's see. Let's see which one is the answer. So the first part says looking close at the current economic deficit. So can I say looking closely? How are you looking? Closely. So the adverb gives me additional information about the verb. Makes sense, right? So I'll say yes. The part that they've corrected here, the correction part for part 1 seems absolutely fine. So I will go with this. And I am saying yes, this is an error. Okay? One can understand the relationship. Same thing, right? We just saw in the previous, we were talking about more than 2 countries, and then there was between. And now here we're talking about the relationship only between 2 things, right? Yes or no? Tax collection and expenditure. So obviously it can't be amongst, it has to be between, because we are referring to only 2 things. So there's an error in part 2 as well. And the expenditure dynamics, because why? Because this is a noun and not an adjective. And the expenditure dynamics. So there's an error in part 2 as well. What else? As well as the errors of the previous ministers. Part 3 seems fine, right? As well as the errors in the previous ministers. See, here the correction sentence is incorrect. As it is, the original statement is fine. The errors belong to the ministers. They own it. They did it. Are you following? So which option is that? Option 5, only 1 and 2. Yeah? Clear? So those of you who said 2 and 4, there's a very clear, even if you miss 1, you can't miss part 2. Part 2 has an error. Okay? Let's move on. We're going to move on. This is the next model where we are saying, boss, there's a phrase in the context which is highlighted and there are options given. And I've already told you how to approach this sort of a question, right? I've said don't get tense just looking at the length of this question or it looks big. Don't worry. I've told you how to dissect and look for changes in the options, right? That's exactly what you'll do to save time. If you look at the first thing, it says search teams from, search teams from, search teams from, search teams from, search teams from. Are attending, are attempting, are attempting, are attempting, are attempting. So the only exception is attending and everything else has attempting. Then I have to reach, okay. By trekking, and then I have cross country, trekking through country, trekking cross country, trekking cross country. So this is an exception here again. Okay, everything else is the same. So now tell me, how can you eliminate wrong answer choices? What is the context telling us? The context is telling us search teams from the army have attempting to reach the crash site by trekking cross country, but their progress is hampered due to inclement weather. So they are attempting to do something, right? So attending obviously doesn't make sense. It's unrelated, out. And you always trek across, not trek through. So eliminate option 2 as well. We've left with 3, 4 and 5. What is it going to be? Search teams from the army are attempting to reach the crash site by trekking cross country, but their progress, and look at this, there's another difference that we missed out, is hampered, had hampered, is abated. Now let's look at this. So obviously, but their progress is hampered, right? It can't be had hampered, wrong tense, out. So search teams from the army are attempting to do something. What are they attempting to do? They are attempting to reach the crash site by trekking cross country. What's cross country? Cross country means? You've heard cross country walking, right? Basically it's trekking across woods, fields, right? Let's go back. So cross country, across fields or countryside, so that's fine. But had hampered is incorrect. Fourth one seems fine, right? What about fifth one? What is this word? This is another one that we missed out. Is abetted. What is abetted? To abet means what? It's a completely different word, right? It changes the meaning of the sentence because abet means you are, when you say abet, you are actually encouraging someone to do something wrong. Abet, right? Encouraging. That's not the word that we need, right? But their progress is encouraging someone doesn't make sense. So you will eliminate option 5 as well. Yeah? Following, so that leaves us with option 4. So all we did is just looked at the context and quickly eliminated wrong answer options, right? You see the difference. There'll always be something, one odd one out sticking out. Quickly see if that is correct in the context or not, and that will help you eliminate options quickly. Yeah? I want you to apply a little bit of context clues. I don't want anybody to give him the answer. Who asked this question? Where is it? Where is it? Where is it? Where is it? Swapnil, I want you to apply a little bit of context clues. What do you think can be the meaning of inclement? Look at that context. It says, search teams from the army are attempting to reach the crash site by trekking cross country, but their progress is hampered. Means it is the weather is not helping them or favoring, their progress is hampered means it's acting as an obstacle. So what can be the meaning of inclement? If it's good weather, then their progress will not be hampered. So inclement has to mean what? Huh? I want Swapnil to answer. What can be the meaning of implement? Is fine. Look at the tense of the context, Chandra. Are attempting, it's present tense only, no? The general tense in the context is present tense. Search teams in the army are attempting to reach the crash site by trekking, continuous tense. But their progress is hampered due to, is hampered is absolutely fine. So yes, Swapnil, there you go, right? It has to be bad weather. That's one. Next one, you do this one. Approach it the same way we did it. You'll save time. Look for distinctions, changes in the options. Yeah, I'm not going to do this. I want you to, so just like how we looked at the last question, you come and tell me what are the changes. Like for example, no, I'm not even going to give you an example. You do it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Take 30 seconds. Do this and hopefully you will get the right answer. Yeah? So Sindhu, you need to tell me why you are eliminating option 3. You need to tell me that. What is the difference? You just can't say, so I have 1, 4, 5. Okay, now let's brainstorm, okay? Let's brainstorm. So what are the changes? It lost market, it got market, losing market, it lost market, okay? Anywhere else in gold, silver? Due to the rise, due to the plunge, due to the rise, due to the rise, due to the rise, okay? Such as China, Cambodia and Bangladesh, okay? Such as China, Cambodia and Bangladesh, such as China and, look at this, such as China and Cambodia and Bangladesh. So, like without wasting time, I will quickly eliminate option 5 first. Double ands. Why and? It's a list. Out. What else can I quickly eliminate? By just looking at the changes, right? Now, the other one I'm seeing is it got market share. Yeah, that's not clear, right? In terms of construction, I will quickly eliminate option 3 as well. Although India failed to cater to increasing demand for high-end cars and handbags, it lost its market share. That makes more sense. Now, what else can I quickly eliminate? What is the general tense in the sentence? The general tense in the sentence is past tense. How do I know that? Look at clue words. India failed to do something. So, losing market, can I eliminate that? Yes, I will eliminate that. I have to choose between 1 and 2. What is between 1 and 2? What can be the answer? Look at the other difference that we have. Due to the rise of competitors or due to the plunge? What's a plunge? Yeah, so 100% 1. Mayank. Yeah, 100% want. I also agree. But what's a plunge? Anybody? So if I say plunge, there's been a plunge in prices, which means there's been a decline. I can plunge into a lake, which means I can jump or dive into a lake. You guys can plunge into your studies. In that context, plunge means you're devoting yourself very earnestly, wholeheartedly, fully concentrating on your studies. Now, is that the meaning that we need in the context? No. So go back. We can eliminate option 2, and of course the answer is 1. Let's read. Although India failed to cater to increasing demand for high-end cars and handbags, it lost market share in gold and silver jewelry due to the rise of competitors such as China, Cambodia and Bangladesh in ready-made garments. I think it's only for a couple of you. Can you just quickly refresh? Okay, let me ask the support team to help here, please. Okay, can you guys check at your end? Yeah, can you guys check? Can you tell me if you're able to hear me now? Okay, is it okay now? Okay, hold on, let me just check. Yeah, can you guys just refresh at your end like Ashok says? Yeah? Okay, I think it's okay to an extent for a lot of you guys. Yeah. Okay, I'm going to move on. A lot of you came back and said, why not option 1, right? I saw that. So look at the context. See, if you look at the remaining context also, it very clearly says, if there is a rise of competitors, right, such as China, Cambodia and Bangladesh in ready-made markets, you are not going to be able to receive or get anything. You'll only lose the market share. That makes more logical sense. And this is a completely different subject altogether. It says, although India failed to cater to increasing demand, so there was a demand for high-end cars and handbags. This has nothing to do with high-end cars and handbags. And then we're talking about ready-made garments here. So yes, for an instant you might come back and think, although is there, so it should be a positive thing. But look at the subjects in the context. And you have due to. The reason why India lost market share in gold and silver jewelry is because of the competitors such as China, Cambodia and Bangladesh in ready-made garments. In fact, it can be very, very deceiving to an extent because of that hint word, although. Okay, I don't know why you guys are still facing audio problem. Okay, let me just, can you guys give me a minute, since most of you are having an issue. Just give me a minute, huh? Guys, can you hear me? Are you able to hear me? Yes, I'm here, but are you able to hear me clearly? I've moved on to the next model. Okay. Hopefully, some of you can hear me. Yeah. So let's look at our next context. Okay, so you guys can hear me. Great. So here's our next model. It says in each of the following questions, a short passage is given with one of the lines in the passage missing and represented by a blank. Select the best out of the 5 answer choices given to make the passage complete and coherent. Okay, so let's look at this. Cultural heritage. So we'll have to choose a context that is in line with the theme of this passage. Cultural heritage is a legacy of physical art and intangible attributes of a group or society that are inherited from past generations, maintained in the present and bestowed for the benefit of future generations. Objects are important to the study of human history because they provide a concrete basis for ideas and can validate them. Their preservation demonstrates something. What? Their preservation is referring to the physical art, yeah? Whatever is being inherited from the past generations. So let's look at this. A recognition of the necessity of the past of the society and of the things that tell its story. So obviously, when we are referring to heritage, I'm sure all of you are aware of what heritage is, right? So heritage is anything that has been transmitted from the past, right? Or handed down by tradition. That's heritage. So if you look at the context, so if I maintain that and make sure I preserve it, so it only shows, what does it show? It shows that I recognize the importance of what it is to retain that heritage. It tells us. So when I preserve certain art and when I preserve certain things that I have inherited from tradition, it will automatically, so when people see that, they'll know that, you know, there's a story behind it. It has history, it has tradition, it has culture. So obviously a lot of you came back and said 3, not the fact that the society respect its tree. Please keep in mind their preservation. Preservation means you're saving it. Why are you saving it? Because people will know about the past, the art that you've saved, whatever you have kept, which is given down by tradition, when they look at it, they will know that it talks about the past. Right? So recognition of the necessity of the past, of the society, and of the things that tell its story. Yeah? Not the efficiency of a society's governance. 3 is also pretty close, the fact that the society respects its history. But to be a little more clear, right, to be a little more effective, we're saying, if I'm preserving something, cultural heritage, art, or whatever it is, so when people come and see that, they'll know that there is a past to it, there's a history to it. Automatically, that art will speak of history and what happened in the past, right? Why are people preserving that? What is the need for them to do that? Because they want people to recognize how important the past is. Not the fact that the society has made good progress, nothing much about the society. 4 and 5 you can quickly eliminate. 2, 2. The only thing that you will be guys, Shubhra, you're saying part 4. If you look at part 4, it says the fact that the society has made good progress. How will I know that society has made good progress? If there is technological advance, right? The context is not talking about that. The context is talking about cultural heritage, preserving physical art. So it cannot be option 4, right? The closest one, the most effective one is option 1. So if you're, look at the context, it's saying you're getting something from past generations, you're maintaining it in the present, and you are giving it, bestowing it for the benefit of future generations. You're retaining it. Why would you want to do that? Because it is important that the future generation should know the history and it should speak of the story, right? It's not just about, guys, the fact that the society respects its history, okay, great, yes, but understand the context. The context is saying for the benefit of the future generations. Why for the benefit of the future generations? Because that art will have a story of its own to educate the future generations, so that they will know how important it is. The past is important. Yeah? So yes, third one seems like a closer fit, but the reason why they want to preserve it, it shows that it will help, it will really benefit the future generations. They will understand the importance of the past. Yeah? Option 1. The efficiency of a society's governance, yes, maybe. If the context is talking about, see, it's not about society's governance here. They're talking about preservation of history, preservation of art. There's a slight difference there. Let's move on. You do this one. Same model. You do this one. Remember, guys, so the previous question, governance is to rule, right? But we're talking about preservation, not governance. What about this one? You do this one. Come back and tell me what's the right answer for this. The economic weight of the world has already shifted in China and India's direction. It will continue to do so as their economic reforms move forward. By 2030, China and India respectively are expected to be the first and third largest economies in the world, with the largest middle classes that US companies will wish to sell to. They will lead the world in demand for natural resources and energy and will be, so pay attention to the last context, right? They will lead the world in demand for natural resources and energy. That's your clue right there. So tell me what can be the answer. Keep in mind natural resources and energy. That's your clue. think and answer. Okay, a lot of you have come back and said option 4. So let's quickly look at it. Some of you are saying 3. Okay. Now, please remember, China has its own government, right? Only some parts of it, I would say, is where democracy works, right? And very specific. But China has to do with communism, right? So, it becoming the biggest democracies in the world, option 3 is not a very logical option here. And I told you to pay attention to the natural resources and energy, right? So, let's look at this. Largest emitters of oxygen does make sense. Yes, I agree to that. But look at the entire context, right? The entire context is talking about China and India are expected to be the first and third largest economies in the world, where US will want to sell a lot of things to. Why would that be the case? Guys, keep in mind demand for natural resources and energy, right? I want you to apply a little bit of logic here. Are you saying that China and India will be the leaders in terms of technology? Think about it. The reason why China and India are so much in demand is not because we are advancing in technology at such a rapid pace. It's because we have a lot of natural resources and energy. That's why I said keep paying attention to that phrase, natural resources and energy. Now, out of the options, if you go back and look at it, what is a naturally abundant non-metallic element that occurs in all organic compounds and can be found in all living things? What is it? Okay, what is a major part of coal, petroleum and natural gas? Tell me that. A little bit of science here. A little bit of science here. Who's good in science? It has to be option 2. Yes, silence speaks, Tanya. It has to be option 2, right? Carbon is the one. Carbon is our hero. Why there will be a demand for natural resources and energy? Why US will want to collaborate with China and India? Because they are going to be the largest emitters of carbon. Because carbon is available in all organic compounds and in living things. Right? It's a major part of coal, petroleum and natural gas. And we are going to be the leading providers in that. That's why. Not that we are going to be the leaders in terms of technology. Yeah? And 5 you can quickly eliminate. Doesn't make sense at all. Not significantly progressive nations is contradicting what the context is saying. And they're not going to be the biggest democracies in the world. Maybe, but not. The closest one is option 2. Yeah. So, I want you to apply a little bit of logic also. We're saying US wants to collaborate with China and India. Why? Because they're going to be the leaders in technology. US. Then where will US be? Right? Keep applying a little bit of logic. Look at context. And yeah, exactly. That's why I'm saying, look at preceding and following context. We need a phrase to complete that last sentence, and I highlighted that phrase for you. You'll have to do a little bit of statistics, Chaitanya. research. Okay guys, just give me a give me a second here. I'm just changing the network, okay, so that you guys don't face. Can you confirm with me if you're facing any problems now? Any voice issues? Uh-oh. Okay. Here's our reading comprehension. How many questions do we have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, for some of you, you still continue to face voice issues. Just check at your end. Okay, there are about 5 questions. Let's quickly scan the questions, okay? Most fruitful way to improve efficacy of the new regulation. So the key word in the question is efficacy. All right. Which of the following is a consequence of the failure of previously framed regulations? They failed to do this. The previously framed regulations failed to do something. So what happened as a result? Okay. Why is the overall supply unaffected even after the temporary suspension of marketing of a drug? Even though the marketing of a drug was suspended temporarily, it did not affect. Okay. Why? We'll have to figure out. Scan. Which of the following can we learn from the other countries in order to enhance the pellucidity between the doctors and the pharmaceutical companies? Pellucidity means, I think, transparency, clarity, whatever. Yeah, that's what it has to mean. Okay. What else do we have? What are the punishments for unethical marketing practices by the pharmacy? So punishments, unethical marketing practices. Okay, great. Let's do this. I know, Abhijit, but it's good to review this, right? We won't spend a lot of time on this. We'll quickly finish this in 5 minutes and then we'll continue. But it's important for you to know how to approach this so you can gain 1 or 2 marks here and there. So we have 5 questions. We've scanned the questions. We have an idea, right? First one, I always keep saying, right? What do I say? Topic sentence, closing sentence. That's what we're going to do. Yeah. So this is para 1. Then I have para 2. Then I have para 3. Okay. So I am able to quickly look at the keyword that I had highlighted in para 3 right there in the first line of para 3. So let's do this. The efficacy of the new regulation will depend on its design. Thus far, attempts to curb unethical practices have not yielded satisfactory results. In this context, it makes sense to focus regulatory attention on companies, as it is easier to make it mandatory for them to disclose more information on marketing expenditure. So look at my options. Setting up a jurisdiction panel, regulative controls on the pharmacy companies, on out, allowing the patients to drag the doctors to courts, banning the interactions between the companies and the doctors, making the pharmaceuticals in public sector firms. So I'm just looking at efficacy and I'm looking at the context around it. I'm trying to figure out what can be the answer for this. If you ask me, right? Look at this. In this context, the following sentence says, it makes sense to focus regulatory attention on companies as it is easier to blah, blah, blah. So it has to be regulative controls on the pharmacy companies. Option 2. So I didn't read the entire context. I identified the keyword from the option. I scanned for in the paragraph for where that keyword is and I focused on context around it. I got 1 mark. Moving on. Which of the following is the consequence of the failure of previously framed regulations? Regulations, I see regulations here. Excuse me. Yeah. We're also paying attention to topic and closing sentence, right? Following, this is the, okay, where's the topic sentence for this? Right here. Let's focus, regulations is there, so I'm just going to focus on the second paragraph, okay? I'm just going to focus on the topic sentence and the closing sentence. What does the closing sentence says? It says, following the ineffectiveness of attempts by MCI to regulate practices of doctors, government has been left with no choice except to create a framework to target and punish companies indulging in unethical marketing behavior. So what has been the consequence of the failure of previously framed regulations? What can it be? Let's look at the options. Increase in the cost of healthcare for the patients? No, that doesn't say. Reduction in the efficiency of the healthcare system? Punitive actions against the pharmacy companies? Exactly, right? Because if you didn't know the meaning of this word punitive, punitive means what? Anybody? Punitive means it has to do with punishment. Do I have the word punish here? Yes. Concerning punishments. So obviously the answer is option 3. Yeah. So another 1 mark I got by again paying attention to the keywords, looking at the context. Okay, people seem to be having voice issues again. I'm asking. So okay guys, yeah, please keep in mind Rahul, we're looking at questions that GradeUp has given us, right? And this session is, since it's both represented by GradeUp and TalentSprint, so we're finishing off those questions for this particular series. Yeah, so let's move forward. So there you go, you have another answer. We're going to move forward. Why is the overall supply unaffected even after the temporary suspension of marketing of a drug? Suspension, where is suspension? It's right here, temporary suspension. That's what it's right there in the second paragraph. Look at that. So let's read around it. The penalty of violations could range from penalties to temporary suspension of marketing of a drug. Why is the overall supply unaffected? Given the intense competition for most drugs, a suspension is unlikely to have an adverse impact on the supply. So there you go. Which gives you that option? Because of the intense competition amongst the pharmacy companies, option 4, right? Given the intense competition, that's your reason. A phrasal verb is a type of collocation, Bhagyashree. It's not the same because collocations are different. I can have a noun, an adjective plus noun collocation as well. Yeah. So coming back. Hey, don't you think we're doing good because we haven't even read the entire passage? We've identified keywords from the context and we're scanning for those in the passage and then answering and getting marks. Yep. Intense competition, that's our reason. Let's move quickly. Which of the following can we learn from the other countries in order to enhance the pellucidity between the doctors and the pharmaceutical companies? For those of you who don't know what this means, it means clarity. Okay? So, I mean, if you look at the first paragraph, there is significant information asymmetry between doctors and patients, and often the demand for medical treatment cannot be postponed. The outcome is malpractice unless healthcare is carefully regulated. Okay. Which of the following can be learned from the other countries? What do the other countries do? Right here, third paragraph. Other countries. Other countries have got companies to provide granular details of expenditure on doctors, which is the first step towards introducing transparency in the relationship between doctors and pharmaceutical companies. So, in order to enhance not clarity, transparency to be more effective, right? So, what are our answer option? Yes, John, right. Determine the expenditure on doctors. That's it. It gives right here. It's right here, right? So when you actually break it down, it's not that difficult, don't you think? What are the punishments for unethical marketing practices by the pharmacy companies? So remember, this we saw in the second paragraph, right? It says right here, the penalty for violations could range from penalties to temporary suspension of marketing of a drug. So temporary suspension of a drug is there, monetary penalties are there, but the context doesn't talk about court cases at all. So which means it has to be an option that says both 2 and 3, and that is option 1. There you go. So in fact, what we've done is, without even reading the entire passage, we figured out the answers, but we'll have to move at a faster pace in the exam, obviously. Yep. Let's move on. Yes, that headache is over. Now, let's look at another model where we'll have to correct the incorrect or the underlined part. My father told me that all the labor and effort one puts into the professional front is meant to make life easier, and therefore any professional success coming at the cost of personal happiness is pointless. So let's quickly that'll come with practice, Rahul. One who puts at, one who puts into, one put it in, one who puts into, one puts into. So by looking at the first one, yep. So let's see. Five, 3. What do you think is the answer? What can you quickly eliminate? You don't need this relative pronoun who again, right? Doesn't make sense. Out. One put it, incorrect verb, out. What else can you eliminate? Are there any other differences? Front is, front are, front is. Anyway, we eliminated 3 and 4. To make life easier, to make life easier, to make life easier. And then I have, and therefore, and then I have hence, therefore. Hence, therefore. Obviously, it can't be 5, no? It either has to be hence or it has to be therefore, because both have the same meaning. So, that leaves us with option 1. Now, let's go back. You can say, because one puts at the professional front. At here only talks about being specific where, in which area, which is fine. My father told me that all the labor and effort one puts at the professional front is meant to make life easier, and therefore any professional success coming at the cost of personal happiness is pointless. Yeah? 1 is the answer and not 5 because of the repetition of hence and therefore. You can only have one of those because both are redundant in meaning, superfluous in meaning. You don't need hence and therefore in the context. Let's move on. You do this. For and, of and, in and, of and, over and. For and girl, I'll just immediately eliminate this. Hard, 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 more harder. Double comparatives, I'll eliminate this. Hardest. Superlative degree, do I need that? Over an abusive relationship, again, incorrect. I will eliminate this. What am I left with? I have to choose between 2 and 3. What is it going to be? Ordeal means a difficult or painful experience, yes? Then you have reminded, reminding. ING form. Eliminate this. That leaves us with only option 2. That's it. Yeah? So recovering from trauma of an abusive relationship was particularly hard for the girl. She was constantly reminded of her ordeal because of the brutal social commentary subjected at her. That's right. So I'm sure you will exactly know what to do for a question pattern like this, right? You look for differences, eliminate the ones. Let's move on. What is this? Passage completion. So we'll have to figure out the first context that we need. Yeah? Are you ready? Can we do this together? Safe investment. Look for repeat words, phrases. Investment decisions, investment portfolio. Okay. Are they talking about any funds? No, right? So can I eliminate option 1? Yes. So if you want to invest in them, what? It's a good idea to consider parameters like credit rating of the bond, rate of interest, and the frequency of compounding. Remember, we're looking at the topic. We need a topic sentence, okay? Introductory sentence we need. Keep that in mind. While investors are specific in their quest for safe investment options, there you go. It's important to understand that safe investment options don't really exist in India or any part of the world. As they say, the only safe investment option is the... So, ideally, if you ask me, there isn't any safe investment options, boss, but the only safe investment option is the savings bank account. Makes sense, right? The flats will be allotted on the basis of a draw and people... Fourth one is completely unrelated. What about the fifth one? So, what investors should really gun for are low-risk investments that offer a reasonable return. This also talks about investments. So they're saying the only safe one is savings bank account, and even then your money won't earn a return. In fact, it won't even survive the eroding effects of inflation. So you may actually lose money in a savings account in terms of purchasing power. This is the reason why it is of utmost importance that proper time be given to investment decisions. Routine check of the investment portfolio should also be made mandatory for oneself. So, what investors should really gun for means aim for, right? This seems like a closing sentence, in fact. Definitely not the topic sentence that we need. Our topic sentence is 3. Yeah. So, as in that's why Shukla, that is the closing sentence. Fifth one. I mean, that is not the question. The question is asking for the topic sentence. So our answer is option 3. Let's move on. Let's look at the next one. You guys want to do this? I'll give you about 30 seconds. This again is asking for a topic sentence, introductory sentence, keep that in mind. So I have 2, 3. So basically the context is talking about what? What are they trying to offer? Assistant, right? So let's look at it. Another major feature, so obviously can't be topic sentence starts with another, there has to be preceding context. Okay. What about option 2? In order to get assistant in as many hands as possible, Google is bringing it to the iPhone. It will go head to head with Siri. Siri is who? iPhone, feature of iPhone, right? Yep. Makes sense. Two seems to be our best bet. It's not clear Google is dipping its toe into the market before launching a competitive job, blah, blah, blah. Not really aligned. Instant apps were originally supposed to run on, this is talking about some versions, but can't be our topic sentence because it starts with an antonym hint word, and our answer is option 2. Yes, only option 2 is suitable here. That fits in the context that can start this particular theme, question. Let's move on. Phrase connectors. Phrase connectors, let's look at phrase connectors. I have Bhopal is no longer a state, one, and then it still has the distinction of hosting India's biggest mosque and the world's smallest mosque. Okay, so our options are although, though, instead. What do you think is the answer? Although and though are contrast hint words. The two questions. What about the two questions? Is it in line, not line? Instead, would instead be appropriate? Although and though pretty much gives the same meaning, right? So let's put down our sentences. I can say, and it says here, pick up the option which when used to start a new sentence. So these are sentence starters. So although Bhopal is no longer a state, it still has the distinction right in the remaining sentence. Likewise, I can say though, same meaning, Bhopal, right? But can I say instead Bhopal is no longer a state? It still has, doesn't make sense. This is a pretty easy one actually, not very difficult. Let's move on. What about this? Sport gives us the right to inject it with a greater moral purpose than say business or politics. Okay. Being artificial means sport is not of the real world. The sharp practices of the real world should not be allowed to seep into the sport. Okay. So same thing here. It says pick out the option which when used to start a new sentence combines the two sentences as one. So in fact they've given connectors as well for the second part. Which one do you think is the answer here? See, I can quickly eliminate option 2. Why? Put it in context. Because sports gives us the right to inject it with a greater moral purpose than say business or politics, then I need a reason, right? I can't say meanwhile being artificial means, so that's at a different tangent. Incorrect. So I will eliminate option 2. Anything that says option 2 I will eliminate, which is 2 and 5. So I'm left with 1, 3 and 4. What can it be? What about 1? 1 says the essential nature of sport gives us the right to inject it with a greater moral purpose than say business or politics. However, being artificial means sport is not of the real world. The sharp practices of the real world should not be allowed to seep into sport. Now it sounds correct, but is the meaning correct? Is there a contrast from the first to the second? Do I need however here to connect it at all? What is the context saying? Are you following the context? Yeah? Let's look at the context, okay? The passage is highlighting one of the important features of the sport. The essential nature of sport gives us the right to inject it with a greater moral purpose. See, only when, for me, if you ask me, meaning-wise, when something is not right, then I take the liberty or I have the right to set things correctly, put it in order basically, right? So if that's the case, the essential nature of sport gives us the right to inject with a greater, they're saying something is wrong with sport, that's why I want to inject it with a greater moral purpose. So it doesn't make sense for me to start saying the essential nature. Essential means what? Something necessary, something fundamental, something really important, something needed. If something is whatever with respect to sport is important and essential and fundamental, I feel fine with it, right? Why do I have the need to inject it with a greater moral purpose than say business or politics? And then this is not contradicting. The second sentence, if you ask me, is giving us a reason. The reason why we need to inject it with a greater moral purpose is because being artificial means sport is not of the real world. The sharp practices of the real world should not be allowed to seep into the sport. In fact, if you ask me, the very third one makes logical sense. The very artificiality of sport, because sport is artificial, I want to inject it with a greater moral purpose than say business or politics. Why? Because being artificial means sport is not of the real world. The sharp practices of the real world should not be allowed to seep into the sport. That makes logical sense. Let me put that in context for you. Let me clear this. Okay, now let's put that in context. So we're saying, I'm going to write the entire context so you get the gist of it. The very artificiality of sport gives us the right, because it is like that, it gives us the right to inject it with a greater moral purpose than say business or politics. I'm hoping you're understanding the context. Basically, they're saying, boss, nobody's. Basically, the context is saying nobody is. I mean, with respect to sports, it's run more like a business or politics just to gain control. It's not. Sports is not taking place for the very essence that sport should portray. That's what the context is saying. So the very artificiality of sport gives us a right that we need to take it to another level, not just limit it to business and politics. Sports should be sports and not business or politics. That's what the context is saying. So why are they saying we need to do this? Seep. Seep means, you tell me. Seep means, you tell me. Apply context clues. Tell me what seep can mean. Something is seeping into something means what? Think and tell me. You haven't heard this word at all, is it? If something is leaking slowly from somewhere, which is a crack in the wall, so when rain comes, rainwater starts seeping in to the room through that wall, right? So in that context, so they're saying the real world should not be allowed to seep into the sport. The sharp practices of the real world should not be allowed to seep into the sport. Let's continue. Politics, because being artificial means sport is not of the real world. The sharp practices, the whole thing, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, I would say only option 3, in fact. That would be the safe bet. Audio problem again, man. Okay, we have, I think we have one more model left. Let's quickly finish this. Hopefully, there's not too much of an issue for you guys in terms of audio problem, and you can still follow. We just have to pick the one that is out of context here, right? Does not fit the theme of the passage. Dowry, 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 dowry. But does it mean that that can be the sequence? Let's see. It is really tragic that in today's progressive world, the evil of dowry continues to exist in all its horrid forms. Okay, many homes are broken and several families are driven to ruin only because they are too poor to afford a rich dowry. Now, this is one of the horrid form, without a doubt. Previously, in the selection of a bride, her family background, education, and her intrinsic worth used to be the primary consideration. So that this previously and now are clue words, connects, right? Previously, this was a process in which, selection of a bride happened. But now, dowry is the first and the only consideration in the majority of the matrimonial alliances. So having said that, seems like 3-4 is in line, is a link. 1-2 is definitely a link because 2 talks about one of the horrid forms of, dowry. What are the consequences of that? Homes get broken, several families are driven to ruin. Yeah, because they're too poor to afford a rich dowry. So what can we, let's look at 5. 5 talks about dowry, but if you look at 5, it says women in India are tortured in the name of culture, giving rise to crime. So 5 is a very generic context, right? It's saying not just dowry, what are some of the evils that women in India face? One is domestic violence, crimes basically, domestic violence. One is dowry, one is rape, one is molestation, many more. So this is pretty generic, but all the remaining 4 are in line with, what are the reasons for dowry, how dowry is approached. So obviously, 5 is the odd man out. Yeah? Agree? There you go. Do we have? Okay. So that brings us to the end of the session. So basically, I'm sure by now, we've looked at a range of questions, and you have an idea of how to dissect the question, how to quickly approach them, save time, and even if it's a higher difficulty level question, apply the same strategies, right? The strategies still remain the same, nothing changes there. The question might be of a slightly lower level or a higher level. Yeah? And I do apologize for the technical glitches that we've had throughout the session. So, and I also appreciate you guys, you were patient, and some of you, yes, it was irritating. I can understand. If I was a student watching the video, I'll also get irritated if there was any glitches, but you can watch the video later. Hopefully, it'll make sense if you were not able to follow through. Yeah. So, yeah, I think how much time should be enough for passages like this, ma'am? Truly, if you ask me, Shubham, what I would suggest you do is, time yourself, because time will always be a factor that will not act in your favor in the exam, right? So it's not just about knowing certain things, it's also about understanding how to apply them smartly, right? You'll also have to understand how to choose the right question so you can save time. If you're not sure of the answer, you don't want to get negatively marked. I keep saying that time and again. So yes, all the very best. We will continue to have sessions, obviously. Tomorrow morning we have a session at 11 o'clock. Please be a part of it. And yeah, thank you guys for staying on and till the end. And I'm sure you've learned something. So if you have, then please give it a thumbs up sign, leave a comment. And if you haven't subscribed to our channel yet, please do that as well. And I will see you guys soon. Take care. Bye-bye.